Cool. So welcome everyone. Thank you, the ones that have been joining so far. Today I'm Gustavo. I'm the DevOps in the Zcash Foundation. I've been in the Zcash Foundation for the past 3 years, a few months, and yeah, I've been working mainly on making the developers' lives easier. So trying to improve the developer experience and all of that. But also we've been focusing latest on improving how we deliver Zebra, how people that, for example, root nodes and stuff like that, how to make their lives easier with Docker Compose. We might also get into other things. We'll see those things throughout the call. And yeah, and basically, I'm very open to questions through the process. So if you have like any questions, just like put it in here so I can answer those. I'll also be like getting feedback uh, through the process. I'll also be showing you like things that we can do, how things work with Docker, and how things work with our CI and our CD. So because some people will also be forking our repository. We've been making bunch of changes, by the way, in the last week with CI for people that is making contributions, so it's easier for them, and also with Docker. Some of those changes very new, let's say, even today and yesterday, and very big changes. So yeah, so we'll be even going through to those new things that we're merging, and even plans that we have for the following weeks and months, let's say. So hopefully my manager doesn't kill me because I'm saying things that we might be doing. But yeah, the thing is, we anyways have just like things that we already agreed that we're planning to do. So it's easier to deploy Docker for the community. So let's get started. I hope that you'll be able to see. I don't know if you can see right now the Zebra repo. If someone can confirm if they can see it, please, just to be certain. I think you can. But basically, here in the Zebra repo, just to give you like an overview and just to, so you to confirm that, yeah, we just like very recently we were fixing some things there. Um, we have well, we're using GitHub Actions for other process of CI and CD. And we've embraced Docker mainly so people is able to deploy my, like for example, most people use Docker to deploy using Kubernetes or using maybe Docker Compose into a machine, but it's just like to make it easier with a simple command to just raise Zebra with, for example, like already raise Zebra with things that we're going to introduce right now, like with Grafana and all those stuff. So we permit you, so you can actually have like a full example of how you can even run Zebra with metrics. We wanted to have that ready for today, but we'll have it ready in the following days. So you can also be able to have those examples. As you can see, even yesterday, Marek from the team was making some updates to the documentation, so it's even easier to go through this process and show you how to do things and how to go through the documentation to understand how to leverage Docker for these purposes. Um, just as a let's say understanding, or we're publishing all of our Docker image here in Docker Hub. So we are a sponsor open source organization here. You'll be able to, like, the easiest way to get Zebra is to make Docker pull CFND Zebra, and you'll be able to have the this in your local, and you'll be able to run it. We'll go through the instructions. Um, at least on the Docker Hub, you won't be seeing like here directly. There's a section in here about Docker where you won't be able to like see all of the things that you can do with Docker. We also changed that, so we have like the Docker specific documentation into here. But that documentation actually exists in our repository. So if you go here to Docker, which I already have open here, There you have Docker composes with like how to raise Zebra with like Wallet D. We'll see that how to raise Zebra with Grafana. I haven't done that. That was yesterday. That was just like we can test that today. How to use Zebra with Grafana. How to use Zebra for testing purposes, or how to use Zebra just like plain Zebra without any of the other components. So the idea here is to have like these composes of things that people commonly use or need to use, and this will also help us like if you give us feedback on which things you like to have like an official kind of official, let's say, Docker Compose where you can put Zebra working with X or Y applications. We can obviously support like every application out there, but just like basically the main ones or the most used ones, so that we can, for example, monitoring is one of the things that people has been asking a few times about. Like, well, I like to put up Zebra with and with all the monitoring tool and see like what's going on in my network and all of that. We'll also talk about that in a while. So there is just like all the things about Docker. This is on our main branch. If you go to Docker here, you will be able to see this directory with all that information, and we'll go into depth in a while. I'll just go into a general sense. Let's leave the workflows for last, and then on our Zebra book, we also have documentation on how to use Zebra with Docker, like how to, and the easiest way, as I said before, is just like, for example, using Docker Run with Zebra CFND Zebra. Like we can even do that right now, which is, let me close this one, which is basically very easy command. I'll do the RM so it doesn't stick here. Oh, sorry, it's not that one. So, there you go. Am I getting nervous? So no, let me just put it like, oh, my bad. I do have, I'm just like trying, I didn't even so I do have already a container named Zebra. That's the one that I'm using. And let me just rename this with a different name, and let's put Zebra code. So yeah, so there you go. So right now it's just like as easy as that. If you like to use Zebra, that's the easiest way. If you want to see it running, to run a node, it's not the recommended way, but it's the easiest way at least to test it and see that yeah, you can put Docker run in here. It will pull the. It's faster in my machine because I already have the image. But if you don't have it, it will get pulled automatically. And yeah, and Zero will start. It will start from Genesis obviously, and will start making the sync. I'll leave it there for a while, and just so you can see after we're ending our call, like what's the process, if it's working, if it's making the sync or not. So you will able to see that. But I'll also show you like other things that we have in here. So let me put this into here. And it's our Docker Compose, for example. So we have a compose that is basically doing the same. You might need to change your platform if you're not on AMD. We need to, one of the things that we need to do, and we're planning to do, we haven't done that yet because we had limitations with GitHub Actions and building for AMD and building for ARM, sorry. For example, in this specific case, I need to specify that it's for an AMD platform. Like that's the image that is available on our Docker Hub is for AMD 64. So I'm running it in my Mac, which is ARM Silicon, yeah, a Silicon Mac. And the way I'm running it is, why it's working is because it's using it's virtualizing basically the environment to work with Linux with AMD. So we also will be building for ARM. We didn't do that in the past because the ARM build took like 3 or 4 hours just to build on our actual pipelines, and we didn't want to have a different process just for that. That has improved lately, so we'll be also building for ARM. So you have like a ARM ready Docker image that, and when you pull it from Docker Hub, like the same one, it will be a multi-platform image actually. So it will have it'll be work on different types of platforms. Um, let's say that in the meanwhile, AMD 64 and ARM, which are the most used ones. So for example, one use case, if you like to run it in a Raspberry Pi, you can build it from source anyways. I'll also talk about that. Even with Docker, but it's easier if you don't have to build it, and you can just pull it from Docker, from the Docker Hub. So yeah, so that's something for knowledge to know. Like we'll be working on the multi-platform for the images. And here it's we basically, these are like the minimum resources defined here in the Docker Compose. And one important thing, when I run this using Docker run, like just plain Docker run Zebra code, this doesn't have, it's not stateful. So if I'm creating the state, if I'm syncing the whole network and I kill the machine, I lost all the information. So that's why the recommended way is to always have a volume created previously and use that volume, or either use the Docker Compose, which already has the volume defined, and you can, maybe change the path to whatever your actual information is. And yeah, so there are different ways to use the volumes, and even here it's explained like different ports that you can map for, like if you like to use Zebra for with enable RPCs, for metrics, for tracing, like what do you have to uncomment here, so it can use that. Or if you like to, let me just uncomment this one without this part, obviously. So if you like, for example, let me redo this in the correct way, which is just the configs and just the ports. Cool. So if you like to, for example, use a custom Docker configuration, you can also have that. I'll show you that right now. If you need to open different ports or more ports, you can also do that here. And if this is the way to use a custom configuration that you have on your machine, so this will be the way to basically use that custom configuration. You target here where the custom configuration is, and also, and by the way, this one default Zebra config.toml, it's already in a repo, so that's what it's targeting here. But if you like to target a different one that is not inside the repo but inside your machine in a different place, you can also do that. You don't have to reuse the repo. You can even copy the Docker Compose to a different place and use whatever uh, Zebra configuration file that you have in your machine to map it to the internal container. So this is basically saying to Docker that we'll be using this configuration file from here, and this configuration file will be using it for Zebra. And this is why I had to uncomment this one, because if I leave this commented, then this won't be used. Even though it's defined here, it won't be used. The way it's being used is when I uncomment this, and then it will target this configuration, and it will say, hey, this configuration that I have on my machine, the target for it, which is the default target on Zebra, it's home Zebra config Zebra toml. So you don't have to change this unless you like to. I'll also, maybe if we have time, explain those more advanced use cases. But it's commonly just changing the actual location of your file. I do not recommend you to, if you're contributing to Zebra, I do not recommend you to use this file and make changes to it, because you might either have to have a git ignore or whatever, or avoid pushing that file. So yeah, it will be noisy. I recommend you to use like a different, completely new file for that purpose. So yeah, that's um, that's how we run Zebra here. I'll leave that one running just in case, and let me open up a new terminal here, and we can, for example, Docker Compose. Yeah, this one in here. and this is also explained in our documentation. What I just did was just like quickly run. This also explains the documentation has been recently updated, as I just said, so you can follow up this correctly. You can create a volume for the Zebra catch and mount it then later on with Docker. So it's just like I'll be Docker running the same Docker run that we have in here with the name and everything, just that I will mounting this volume that I just created here. So this is the source. So this is the volume that I just created and the target. And the target, as you'll see here, it's Home Zebra, just as we saw. Sorry about the change on screens. Just as we saw here, it's the same target. So this is the default target for the cat states. So yeah, just for you to be aware of that, that this will be the same. It's just like one way is doing it directly with Docker run, and the other way is just like using the Docker Compose. So, another interesting thing is that we have different features available in our configuration. Some of those features are not enabled by default. So you see um, the default features. For example, in here, if you go to the repo, which are which ones are the defaults, and some other features like I don't remember if it's called, I don't think it's Grafana. I don't remember. Prometheus, I think it's the one. Yeah, Prometheus. Those, so for example, these ones will be enabled by actually building with the future enabled. I'll show you also a little bit about that. But the way to do that is that if the Docker image that we're publishing doesn't have a specific feature that you need, but is at least available in the source code, you can just like build your own Docker your own image, yeah, your own Zebra image, just like specifying. I'll show you also about that, the features that you like to enable. But if you like to build your custom image with whatever changes that you've done and you like to test it, this is the way to do that. There are also some configurations here that you'll be able to see. The documentation is here, so I'm just like explaining as a general sense. Like if you like to enable RPCs, if you like to, well, if you enable RPCs, like how to get the cookies, how to disable the cookies, because some people this might be a breaking change on their actual infrastructure. So what's the way to disable the cookies? And some other examples, for example, with live OLED that I'll show you right now, and also with Grafana. So this is recent. This is very new here. The Docker Compose with Grafana, but that's something that we can also use. And if you like to kind of replicate what we have, I'll talk about that later on. But if you like to replicate some of the things that we have on our CI for testing purposes, if you're, for example, doing contributions, right now our CI is very tied to our actual infrastructure. We're thinking and making the analysis on how to make it easier for contributors, but at least the integration tests are very tied to our actual infrastructure. So when you make a fork, you might not be able to use CI purely. There were even a recent, I'll show you that right now. There was a recent contribution from Sellout, who actually even disabled that for the persons that are basically cloning a repo. So some actions, if you clone the repo, won't be running on your fork because those actions have been very recently enabled to just run on the Zcash Foundation repository. And this is because there are some actions that won't be working, will be crashing, will be send you alerts because they're not working because they're tied to our infrastructure. So that's the reason why this was a great addition. So thank you, Greg, for that, because this will make people contributing to Zebra even easier. So going back to, sorry that I deviated a bit. So going back the Docker composes. So we have, I explained you like the basic one and how to make changes here. The other one is the light wallet one, which is basically very similar, just that we have environment variables available here for the RPC ports. We have like this environment variable, which is enable cookie out to false. So in case you don't want to make have all that complexity in, you can just disable it. Not recommended by default because for security purpose, not recommended. But if you like to test, it's the fastest way to do it. And this is Zebra with light quality service. We're using ECC's light quality Docker image, and in this case, it's also setting the environments to connect, let's say, to Zebra. And here are just like all the initialization by default, not security, not very security aware. And as you can see here, no TLS very insecure. And well, here is the warning. That's why in red on why you shouldn't be using this on production just for testing purposes. So you for yeah, and just saying that all of these Docker composes are mainly for testing purposes. So if there's a Docker compose that you like to use for production, well, you'll have to make changes to the Docker compose that we have in the repository. So these are basically for testing to make things easier, but in some sense they are not meant to be used in production. Okay, that might be something that we'll have to think about later on. And also for testing, so some people might like to run Zebra for testing purposes, and in that specific use case, as very different to the other ones, it's like, for example, in like Wallet, when calling Zebra, we're using the default image that we had in the Docker Hub. The default Docker Compose also does that, uses the image from our Docker Hub or Grafana. I'm not certain, no. And Grafana and like Wallet, yeah, like Grafana and test, sorry, are the two that are different in that purpose. So because instead of using the Docker image that we push to Docker Hub, instead it builds Zebra and it creates an image locally for that purpose. So this one and this one is a very similar use case to the example that I just was talking about recently, which is building Zebra for those specific, building a custom image for those specific use cases that you might have. And this is a great example because this is actually enabling a feature that is not enabled by default, which is Prometheus. And we are also like having this conversation if we should enable this by default only in the image that we're pushing to the Docker Hub. And a way to test that, as I said, I myself haven't haven't tested this one yet. But let me see. By the way, now that I'm trying to test that, so yeah, let's test it with the documentation. We have like the Docker Compose in here for Grafana, and technically you just copy this in here, and this will sorry, and this will start pulling the images that I don't have. That's so you can confirm that I'm a lion. So I didn't have those images here. So it's Prometheus, it's Grafana that it's pulling from Docker Hub, and then it will also start building a new image for Zebra, enabling the futures. So even though it's more advanced, I think we're just like almost half an hour in. So let's go into depth here. Um, while this builds. So how that happens, like how do we put a environment variable with futures, Prometheus, and then that gets built with that future. So if we look for futures here, you'll see that our Docker image actually accepts arguments. And this is what we're actually, sorry, this is what we're actually passing here, this argument of futures, and our Docker file accept that argument of futures, and then enable this as an environment variable. There's something more complex happening in the background, which is our entry point, and thankfully, because of the entry point, which was very recently refactored completely from scratch, basically, or Docker filing in our entry point. This was done by Mark, so thank you for that, because it was also very simplified a lot. So what's happening here is that when we build using the arguments, some of those arguments will get transformed into environment variables for the Docker container. So you'll be able to see that we have multiple arguments here. Let me put this. Yeah, so there you'll be able to see well, like the cashier, the futures, the user, the UID, the zebra catch deer. So this is the one that we were seeing, like home.catch.zebra slash zebra. You can change that. In some environments, the home, and if we look for home here, will be the user actually. But yeah, if we look for home here, you'll see that it will be home slash user. In some very restrictive environments like Kubernetes, like in GKE, for example, or with Kubernetes on very specific restricted platforms, you can't use the home for writing. You can use /var or whatever other directory, and you might want to build your own Docker image, your own Zebra image, by changing the home here. Okay, so or by setting a diff no not but sorry a catch so a catch here. So this will be the environment variable that you would like to change. An example here in Grafana will be like adding this into here. Yeah, even the zebra conf, but in this case will be the cashier, because you're not able to put it in there, and you'll have to maybe do it in var. So that's a way that you can change the behavior on where the catch state will be placed. Okay, so you can build your own zebra image, changing all of these values to the values that you think are actually acceptable for you or for your production usage. So, so that's one way. Oh, something interesting here. If you go through this Docker file, it's documented here, so you'll see like the details. But it's very verbose, sadly. It's very verbose in a sense, like for example, we have all these mounts in here. All these mounts get repeated in here. That's explained into your documentation, like why we is it. I think it's not. I'll check that because if it's not, I'll need to add that to the documentation, like explain why this is here. But that's basically we do have an issue on this, and this is a ROS issue on how ROS actually leverages the catch from GitHub Actions and other CI environments. So this is a workaround to be able to build Zebra more fast in CI environments, so it doesn't take 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours it took before to build, but to actually make it very fast and use the catch from the CI environment. So this is why we have this in here. But the other thing that I wanted to tell you, this is a single Docker file. It's a multi-purpose Docker file in the sense that you can use it. You can use the same Docker file for testing, or you can use it, for production usage, which is the runtime. And the difference mainly is that the one for testing will be enabling features that you don't need in production, and it won't be, as secure. So this is something that you need to take into consideration, because it will also add like building dependencies and stuff that you won't be needing into production. If you go, for example, go to Docker Compose test, this is still, oh, there you go. If you go to Docker Compose test, you'll be able to see that the target here is the test image. And if we go to the normal one, well, this the Grafana one, let's say, actually, the target here is the runtime. So the runtime image, let's go here up to the bottom, down to the bottom, and it's from Debian, and it's just taking the binaries of Zebra, just taking the entry point, and yeah, so it's a very tiny image. The other one is just like I think it's around 2 GB on 1 GB and a half. It's very big, the one for testing. So the runtime it's very tiny one. So you'll be able to see like this is just what's going on here. It's just like creating enabling the futures and and setting up the user and the UID and giving permissions for the user to be able to use its own home and all of that. So and the entry point is the most important part here because being testing or being the runtime, all of the images will be using this entry point. And this entry point basically creates a Zebra configuration file on the fly. And why we did it that way? Because it's easier from a Docker environment perspective, from a Kubernetes perspective, for most of the node operators that are using Docker to just like change the variables and deploy and then have their deployment with new with a different or a new Zebra configuration file instead of having to mount the configuration file or having to maybe there's restrictions on their environments, maybe it's not that easy to make the mounts or whatever. But yeah, so this is just like you can pass like different configurations, the network, the RPC endpoints, if you like to enable cookie off or not, and based on that it will start creating the Docker configure the Zebra configuration file. So it will create the configuration file based on all these environment variables that you can pass, and you can change the behavior of Zebra based on those configuration or environment variables, let's say. So this is what's basically doing. And it's a little bit big because it works not just for the runtime part, but also for the testing part. We might want to maybe segregate that in the future, but in the meanwhile, it's been working correctly this way. Which is if you like to run tests, that's the other part of the conversation. You can run tests locally using Zebra, and I'll show you about that in a while because that's more advanced for this time now. So as you can see here, we were able to leverage our Grafana and with Zebra, and now here we have like Zebra working with Grafana in here, and we'll be able to confirm that if we go to here. So let's go to localhost. Oh, did it map? Network mode host. Oh, I need to confirm that, by the way. Yeah. Maybe it's not. Okay. That's part of the testing that we need to, that's part of the things that this is the first time that I'm running it. So yeah, but you can see that it's actually running the Grafana with Zebra, and it's already like using even the primitives that has been put into here with the default configurations that we have in the repository. Okay, so this is one way you can add like more services into here. There's even I almost forgot about that. There's even a I haven't tested it with Docker yet. But one of the things that one of the engineers did was a Kibana blockchain explorer. So that's something that we can also like create a Docker compose, add the Elasticsearch, go through this README and mount a block explorer with Elasticsearch and Zebra and have like a Docker compose that puts everything together. So we can like see the dashboards with all the information that we might want to, that is default in here, but that we like to also add additionally. So there's also this is on our Zebra book. So this is also information that you can do and you can add and you can test like how it works. There's also in here you'll be able to see information. I think that it's for Prometheus, if I remind correctly. here in our repo. Yeah, so this is the default. I have that on my local also. This is like the default configuration that it will be using when you use the Docker Compose sub. So yeah, so that's basically from a Docker perspective, some of the things that you can do with Zebra. Easy ways. There are some more advanced use cases like running the test. That's one of them. Like you can build Zebra for testing. So this is one way to do it. You can also do it manually. I'll show you. Actually, all our CI is based on this Docker file and this entry point. So all of our tests, like most of our tests, actually, most of our tests are being run in a Dockerized environment. So they are Dockerized with this Docker file. So you're able to even replicate that locally. And the way to do that is building the image for testing. So, for example, if you like to, let me open a new one here. If you like to, let me move this a bit here because I think my face is there on the call. So this will be, for example, if you like to Docker build, for example, you can Docker build with multiple parameters, or you can, and one of the parameters is target. So when you set the target can be test or can be runtime. So if you set it for tests, or you use the Docker Compose that we have in here, or whatever, it's easier for you. It'll be running here as test. Oops. Let me look for it as devs. And you'll see here that we have as test. Okay, it's because of the case. Here it will, the difference here is that it will be enabling the futures, the zebra checkpoints, and it will be adding, well, it will be adding also, just for your knowledge. So you're aware, like this is here. It will add light wallet binary into the test image. So the test image has Zebra and Light Wallet both binaries together. This is for easiness for testing. So commonly you'll see this way, like a container for Zebra, and this is actually the best practice: a container for Zebra and a container for Light Wallet. But for testing purposes in our CI environment and even locally, to make it just like fast and confirm that this is working correctly and we don't have to have like two different containers connecting to each other, we just like copy the binary of like wallet and put it inside the same image. So and I'll show you how that works now. So that's also like, even though those are binaries, actually the build processes that make it bigger. So the binaries are not like that big. But that's why you also have like the light wallet, the information in here, and it's just like to set them up correctly. And in the entry point, it will get run with the test variable, with the test argument, and this will actually get here, and it's basically making a cargo test, and it will capture the different environment variables that you like to, or the different tests that you like to run. There are like different environment variables to run them. For example, if you like to run all the tests, there's a environment variable for that, so you can like run all the tests. You can run tests with fake activation height, the scanner, the Zebra, uh, test the full sync, test update sync. So yeah, so all of this is the same thing that we even have on our Git and on our CI. So we are basically creating all these jobs with these variables and turning on the variables for the different tests. So if we like to test this, then we put the variable and turn on the test. Even light wallet, for example. So this is testing light wallet in the container, but we need light wallet available, and it was just like very complex to have it outside, even though we can do it that way in the pipeline. It was just too noisy. So we put the light wallet runtime into, or binary into the same Docker image. So this way you can run it all of them together, and it can test like what it did with Zebra together. So even you can, if you like to create your own or you like to test it like with other binaries inside of it, you can even do something very similar to this that we're doing here. That is, you can copy an actual binary from whatever image that you have, even locally or or remote, and you can add it in here, and you can even test all those things together into a Docker container for testing purposes. Again, I don't recommend you to do that for production purposes. It is not Docker is not meant to be used that way for production. So yeah, so that's basically it, and I'll show you how that works in our CI system basically. And on CI, if we go to, let's go here. I think we're done with that one. Yeah. So in RCI, we have, let's go to our main workflow, which is CI tests. So this basically, let me, I don't know if it's easier to show it here or to show it in the IDE, because it's black and maybe it won't mess with your head and changing from black to white screens. So let's go here. So in our CI we have our test, and this runs for example on a schedule basis, because there are specific tests that we all Fridays at the end of the day we run a full sync to test on the weekend, and this is one if this is the scale work that actually gets gets the work done. Um, so I won't be very specific about this because it will take a lot of time. But this gets triggered on pull request, tickets this gets triggered on pushes to the main branch, and basically for all of our tests, most of our tests, we're building the Docker image that we use for CI, and you'll see like here, these are the futures. We have like the production futures, and we have some test futures that we have enabled on our GitHub repository as environment variables, and like which Docker image you'll be using, what's the target of the Docker image, and things like that. So basically, as a general, we built a Docker image for running tests on CI using the test target. And then we run unit tests. So the unit tests are the ones that you can run locally without any issues. This one should also be able to run on your repository. The integration tests will be the ones that we won't be able to run, because as you can see even here, those are meant to be run in GCP. So, and GCP is because this is our infrastructure that we're using right now. But yeah, this is the things that we need to think about, like how to improve later on. So if we go, for example, to the unit test, and this is just for your understanding of this. This is just this file is just like defining the whole workflow. Like you need to build the image, the test for running. They need the build, so they need the images, and we even here you can see that for running Zebra or for running the unit test, we're saying, hey, give me from this build the output of the image, the digest of the image. So I can use that image on the runs that I'll be doing. And these two depend on the build, and these two run in parallel. So they both need to wait for the build to happen to run. And these are the dependable workflows. This is a GitHub concept that because previously we had to copy paste into multiple workflows. When they created the reusable workflows, we started using those, so we don't have to replicate most of the waste. For example, our CI or Docker build, we had to do our Docker build onto a unit test file, then our Docker build into integration test, then our Docker build into deployments, and this part of in here or this workflow in here, we had to repeat it through all of our different workflow files. So that's why we're using reusable workflows. So basically, this workflow in here, all these workflows that are called sub build, sub CI, they are reused for different use cases. So it might be confusing in some cases, basically in integration, because this is a sub workflow that reuses another sub workflow, and yeah, that might be confusing. So there we have like the unit test, and the unit test. For example, one of the things that we saw in our entry point that I show you once again is that we have in our entry point. Let me just confirm that this won't disappear. Is that we have our all run all tests for now. Sorry. Oh, I went into Spanish there. Run all tests. So when this test all in here, if we look for run all tests, this is what actually doing. This is something that you can even run locally. So it's just like it's pulling the image. Well, you have to build the image first, but then like build it for testing, and then you can run the image with these environment variables, which is like run all test one, and this will go into the entry point, and it will run cargo test with the futures, and it will run basically all of the test. Then if there's another one like test fake activation heights, then we can see like it's just like turning on those variables, going into the entry point, and then in this specific one, which is not all tests, it's just like with activation height, so it will just trigger with activation height. So these are just like environment variables to be able to identify like the specific part in the entry point that you will be triggering, so we don't have to make all those noisy commands here that we might need to change, and we didn't want to change our Docker or workflows and have been to trigger the workflows just because there's a change in the Docker file and things like that. So yeah, so that's why. And also we wanted to make this easier to run locally. If we like to test like something locally, we just need to Docker run with or simulate what's happening on CI, so we can run it locally with this environment variable on, and it will basically run this test. So all of the steps empty sync is the same thing. So if you look for minus e, you'll see all the different environment variables that we can set, like what the integration. So it's test like what the one, test like what the integration one. If you like to search for other things, so yeah, basically everything is just like defined here. Other things, testnet. Yeah, you can also define like minus e network testnet, and it will change the network. Instead of using the mainnet, it will use testnet, and also for whatever other things like if you like to change the configuration path, or like, oh, you I like to use a different configuration file, then we just need to change this variable to use a different configuration file. So this is basically what we're doing here. It's just like using the variables that are available on the entry point to change the behavior of Zebra for testing, or changing the behavior of the configuration file based on those variables. So it's for easiness, so we don't have to manually change a file, because the other way was just like, oh, we need to test a different thing. Maybe need to different files, or maybe we needed to commit those files, make changes to be able to test it. So right now we can even, for example, change variables on GitHub environments, and we don't need to make commits to test a specific change. We just need to change a specific feature, for example, or a new feature, which is not to make the change on our environment variables and rerun the workflows. So this is the one that you can run locally. The one that you might won't be able to run locally, that you won't be able to actually run it fully, is the integration test, because these tests are just like actually very tied to our infrastructure, and it's for creating the cat states, making full syncs and all of that. And even those are very similar to the thing that we just saw right now. It's just that it reuses another sub workflow, and all of them basically run on GCP. And this is just like creating the GCP instances and all of that to be able to run the containers there in GCP with those variables. We also did it this way in GitHub Actions, because we're able to see in here, like, oh, let's go to a pull request, it's easier. we'll be able to see in here, like if something is failing in integration tests, or this is a great example. If something is failing, we're able to see it here. So we didn't want to the engineers to go to GCP and see what's going on in there in the logs, but to actually, have this in here. And this is getting the logs from the Docker container inside the VMs. There's better ways to do that. We'll also having some analysis to make those changes, so we don't have to use those VMs. But yeah, in the meanwhile, it's just to have the information here available in here. So yeah, so that's basically how to use uh, Docker and the Docker composes and the Docker file and the entry point and other things that will be interesting for you to know, considering that we're almost on time, is sorry, let me just move this here. Okay, cool. Is or here that I was explaining the workflows, by the way, we also have like a new documentation here, which is explaining all these relationships between the workflows. It's explaining all the things that we use in our CI right now, how we actually deploy our infrastructure. There's a there's a Terraform that if you like to replicate our infrastructure, there's a public Terraform. I need to document that Terraform also, so people is able to use it easier. But yeah, there's a Terraform that you can use if you like to deploy that into GCP. Um, there's also information about like the registry that we're using, why we're using Docker Build Cloud. The build previously happened inside the GitHub Actions. We moved that into Docker Build because it was way faster, considering the cache state, the caching usage issue that Zebra had. Zebra not Rust, sorry, Zebra Rust has, because Rust still has, which is, by the way, I just linked it here because otherwise I completely forgot. So we need for Rust to close these issues in here, and we'll be able to remove all the noisy things on our Docker file. We'll be able to go back to using maybe even our CI or simplify CI a lot after this gets solved by Rust. And also here just explaining, like we also have like some hosted runners. Someone very recently asked me about this one, or asked us about this one, which is why we're using hosted runners. It's because some tests with, for example, the syncs, mainly the full sync, like we run a test on a weekly basis that syncs the whole network. That obviously takes more than 6 hours. That's the hard limit for GitHub runners, and we can go beyond that if it's not with a hosted runner. So even that hosted runner, how to deploy it, it's available here on the Cloud Foundation, the Cloud Foundations, and with Terraforms basically. So yeah, so that's also defining here. With the self-hosted runners, which is for extending. This is the hosted runners. This is for extending to 6 hours, and we are using GKE for that. And the reason is to always keep the logs into GitHub. Queue management, we use Mergify. Some of the when you open APR to our repo, you might not be running all of our the tests. The tests will be run by Mergify before merging. So we review, some tests get run, and the missing ones will get run before getting actually merged. So just be aware that you might be creating a pull request. We might approve it. It might start merging, and it might fail, and you might need to fix it because some tests are getting fully run with Mergify before getting completely merged into the main branch, and that's for multiple reasons, security reasons, and the other reason is to avoid getting consuming so much resources on PR or running things on PRs that we haven't approved yet. So here, yeah, you'll be able to see like all the workflows, like why we have these patches. So yeah, one of the things that I don't like at all is that you'll be able to see that we have a lot of yeah, external patch. And this is a GitHub limitation. They're working on that. I didn't link that here. I forgot to link that here. Like that limitation that GitHub Actions, or is it this one? Oh yeah. So yeah, there's a limitation on GitHub Actions, and that's just like getting around that limitation, and that's why we need like these patch files, and yeah, and this also explains how to run. I just explained you that how to run it like locally with or how to run the different tests with the variables, and yeah, so you'll be able to also see other information on best practices with building. Like this is an example of how to that's what I was going to do, like building with target tests and guidelines and known issues that it will be good for you to know when you're making PRs and stuff like that, some limitations that we might have, and the dependencies that we have on GCP. So this is all explaining how our CI works, and hopefully that's helpful for you also. So we have a few minutes. I don't know if there are any questions that people might want to do. If we have any here, let me check. Okay, so sorry that I wasn't looking at the chat. I forgot to actually open that up on my local while I was presenting. Someone was saying if I was gonna ask about persistence with the compose. Okay, so I think that's answered. Are there Docker compose that will spin up server instances of Zebra that talk to each other over the network? Okay, that's a great scenario. Um, so why haven't we done that? That's a great question. No, there's no Docker Compose for that, and we haven't done that because there are like two main ways, let's say, that people commonly do that. It's either in the Docker Compose we can build it for Docker Swarm, and that will be for you to test locally using Docker Swarm. Some people also use Docker Swarms for production. But the best way will actually be with a Kubernetes cluster or something like that to be able to have like multiple instances. I do recall there was I'll share that in Discord. I'll also share it with the communications team so they can put it on where it's helpful. But I do remember someone from the community that already had some examples of using Zebra in a Kubernetes environment with multiple replicas. We also have on our CI a way to put it using multiple replicas on GCP, but there's actually not an example of that with Docker Compose or something like that. So yeah, we'll think about doing something like that. Um, so yeah, maybe if I explain something wrongly about not using, yeah, we do recommend using Docker in production. We just don't recommend using those Docker compose that we just show you in production because they're not meant for production. They're meant for testing, basically. We will think about creating maybe a Docker compose that is actually have like all the parameters. But the thing is that that may vary a lot between people that would like to deploy Zebra. But yeah, we could maybe put something up like something production ready, like, with which parameters should be on and an example of how should that work for a production like environment. But those specific local compose, you will have to change the configuration for production usage. Um, so yeah, so I think that's basically it. If you have any other questions, you can look for those posts in Twitter, Discord, on the forum. Ask the questions there. They'll be sent to me, and I'll make all the possible to answer your questions. So thank you very much for your time. I'll appreciate it, and hopefully we can repeat this with different scenarios, and we hopefully will have like other things available for you to test. So thank you very much.